Jim Shannon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, to ask the Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs to make a statement on the raid of BBC offices in Delhi and Mumbai and allegations of tax evasion following the BBC documentary India, the Modi question. Thank you.
Minister David Rutland.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for Strangford, my honourable friend, for raising this urgent question. I appreciate his interest in the recent news that India's Income Tax Department has conducted what has been described as a survey on the BBC's offices in New Delhi and Mumbai. This began on the 14th of February and finished after 3 days on the 16th of February. As everyone in this House will be aware, the BBC is quite rightly, operationally and editorially independent from His Majesty's government. While I cannot comment on the allegations made by India's Income Tax Department, the BBC has said that it is supporting its staff in its Indian offices and cooperating with the Indian authorities to resolve this matter as soon as possible. Respect for the rule of law is an essential element of an effective democracy. So too is an independent media and freedom of speech. They make countries stronger and more resilient. That's why we regularly engage with different parts of India's media and support it. For example, through the annual South Asia Journalism Fellowship Programme under the flagship Chevening brand, which includes over 60 Indian alumni. As my honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, has previously said, the UK regards India as an important international partner, and His Majesty's government is investing heavily in strengthening our ties. Our broad and deep relationship, guided by the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership and the 2030 Roadmap for India-UK future relations, allows us to discuss a wide range of issues in a constructive manner with the Government of India. We continue to follow this matter closely.
Jim Shannon.
Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for his response, but I want to obviously develop the question. Let's be very clear. This was a deliberate act of intimidation following the release of an unflattering documentary about the country's leader. Yep. Since its release, there has been a concerted effort to prevent the documentary screening in India. Take-down notices issued to Twitter and YouTube have resulted in an India-wide ban of the documentary on these platforms, the suppression of freedom of expression in media and with journalists. When students from universities across the country have tried to organise screenings of the documentary on university campuses, dozens have been arrested, while others face internet blackouts with power cuts. As the raids on the BBC offices commenced, a BJP spokesperson issued a statement, and I quote, "The BBC indulges in an anti-India propaganda. India is a country which gives an opportunity to every organisation as long as you do not," their words, "spew venom." These raids have all the appearance, Madam Deputy Speaker, of a reprisal against the BBC. They have come at a time when independent media are being hounded more and more, and when pluralism is shrinking in India. Not my words, but the assessment of Reporters Without Borders. Strong words indeed. The justification of financial irregularities and tax evasion has been used to shut down more than 14,000 NGOs, people and organisations doing great work in India, and media outlets in the past 6 years. They have included, and these are household names, Amnesty International, Greenpeace, Oxfam. Madam Deputy Speaker, this has had a chilling effect on journalists, human rights advocates and religious minorities. These raids happened 7 days ago. In that time there has been silence, and I say this respectively, from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. No government statements have been issued, and it has taken a UQ to encourage the government to condemn such a blatant attack on press freedoms. Alarmingly, these raids, and I close with this, happened hours after the government signed a trade deal with India. It's led to allegations that the silence from the government is due to the proximity of this deal. In conclusion, can the Minister tell me and this House if the government intends to summon the Indian High Commissioner over this issue and raise it with his counterparts?
I thank the honourable member for his comments. I did note a bit of coughing going on here, which is giving a clue to a few things, but I'll follow on. He raises some important points. Obviously, the UK support for media freedom is well known, and media freedom and freedom of speech are essential elements for robust democracies. As I said in my opening remarks, I can't comment on the specifics of the allegations because it's the BBC that's cooperating with the Indian authorities on this matter. And as the BBC has said, this is an ongoing investigation, and it would be inappropriate for us, that's the BBC, to comment further. My honourable friend made also some important points about implications for NGOs and for faith-based organisations too. And he knows we continue to work with them on the ground, and that's an important issue for him. It's certainly an important issue for me.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I've often drawn the attention of the House to the very important work done by the BBC monitoring service, and does not this extremely worrying raid on the BBC locally in a country as advanced and potentially well disposed towards this country as India once again illustrate the importance of not having too much reliance on sources in countries that we are reporting upon, because there is always the potential of action being taken against local sources. And therefore, when it comes to services like monitoring, they should have a strong representation in this country to guard against events of the sort that we have so disturbingly seen.
I thank my right honourable friend for his thoughts on these matters, and he has been consistent on these issues. I'd like to highlight that we do believe that the BBC plays an important role, and FCDO funds 12 languages, including 4 in India: Gujarati, Marathi, and Punjabi and Telugu, and will continue to do so because it's important for our voice, an independent voice, through the BBC to be heard throughout the world.
Shadow Minister Fabian Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, India is a country with a rich heritage and is rightly proud of its place as the world's largest democracy. However, in a democracy with true media freedoms, criticism cannot be shut down unnecessarily, and freedom of expression must be protected at all costs. Last week's raids on the BBC in India are therefore deeply worrying, regardless of the official narrative as to why they took place. Madam Deputy Speaker, the BBC is a globally respected broadcaster, rightly renowned for its high-quality, trustworthy reporting. It should be free to report and operate without intimidation. Now, on this side of the House, we're particularly worried about reports that suggest that BBC staff have been forced to stay in their offices overnight and have faced lengthy questioning. In any democracy, the media must have the ability to criticise and scrutinise political leaders without fear of repercussions, and that clearly applies in this situation. I'd therefore like to ask the Minister what discussions he's had with both the BBC World Service and with his Indian counterpart regarding the welfare of BBC staff that have been questioned, and what steps he's taking to protect the BBC World Service from intimidation. Madam Deputy Speaker, it would send a deeply worrying message to BBC staff around the world should the government not make its position on the protection of the BBC's trustworthy and valuable reporting absolutely clear to the House today.
Minister.
The honourable member makes important points, and it's because of our broad and deep relationship with India that we're able to discuss a wide range of issues in a constructive manner with the government of India. And as part of those conversations, this issue has been raised, and we continue to monitor the situation. He asks important questions about the BBC staff, and the BBC have said in their statement that they are supporting the staff, and obviously welfare is a priority for them. Consular support is also available if requested, and we continue to monitor the situation. He raises the point, the importance of media freedom. We absolutely support that, and that's why we have agreed a package of funding for the BBC World Service, and also FCDO has got the additional funding to help with key languages within it.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I draw the House's attention to my entry in the Register of Members' Interests. It is important to understand the BBC is not an arm of the British government. In fact, the BBC is frequently critical of Her Majesty's government, or His Majesty's government, and clearly that is something that resounds around the world, that some people believe that the BBC is actually representative of the government. Does my honourable friend agree with me that it's important that the BBC, wherever it operates within the law and within the tax rules that are appropriate? And will he confirm that the Inland Revenue or the income tax authorities in India have actually been investigating the BBC for 7 years?
The BBC does have an independent voice and editorial capability as well, and that's vitally important. As I said earlier on, and as he can read from the BBC themselves, they are continuing to be involved in this ongoing investigation. They've said it's not appropriate for them to make any further comment at this point, but it is an ongoing investigation which they're actively engaged in.
SNP spokesperson Drew Hendry.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The SNP absolutely condemned this alarming attack on the BBC offices in New Delhi and Mumbai. The BBC World Service is a renowned and respected news outlet. For decades, it's shone a light on global affairs around the world, including human rights abuses and undemocratic practices. What we've not heard from the Minister is what the FCDO is detailing about the diplomatic steps it has taken and will continue to take to convey its opposition to these raids in the strongest term and to safeguard those BBC journalists affected. Human rights abuses, discrimination and governmental scapegoating against India's religious minorities are well documented, and political transparency and freedom of press are essential, and the BJP seem content on violating these principles. So does the Minister agree that additional funding is now necessary to ensure that the BBC World Service's independent, unbiased radio broadcasts in Hindi are not cut? And given these appalling raids, will the FCDO now reconsider its approach to negotiations on the release of Jagtar Singh Johal, who the softly approach just doesn't seem to be working?
Minister.
The honourable member makes important points about freedom of religion and belief. That's absolutely key, and I know that's at the heart of much of what the honourable member for Strangford had said in his opening remarks. He also talks about funding. We have, as I've said already in answer to a previous question, we have put a package of funding together for World Service, and the FCDO as a government, and the FCDO has provided funding particularly for those 4 languages which I highlighted earlier, because we believe that is vitally important to be able to, for the BBC to have that independent voice and to have the reassurance that it can carry on its work.